This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Chof Adalin. We're learning for the month of Teves. This is the Daf for Asara Teves. Has been generously sponsored as a close friend of the Daf. As Aschos Alias the Shama for Aryeh ben Rav Yaakov V'Siyata the Shemaya. The Koyach HaTorah Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam should be an incredible Alias Neshama for Aryeh ben Rav Yaakov, as well as the Schos HaTorah should be a Refuah Shlema for Tinoik Ben Miriam Ahuva B'Seich Sha'ar Chayle Yisrael. We're holding it at the end of the first white line in Chav Gimel Amid Beis. And the Gemara is in the middle of discussing that if one of the parties in a Din Torah says he wants to have extra edim, is there an allowance? Can he demand such? We had a machlekes. Says the Gemara, name of it looked to the Rabbi Rashba Kamifligi. Maybe this machlekes, whether one could have such a demand or not, is a machlekes Rebbe and Rashbak. Titani learned in our brayso, habalad lidoin bishtar ubechazaka. This brings us back to our Baba Basra days. This is actually at the very end of Baba Basra. Habal lidoin. If someone who's living in a property comes, they're debating with the original owner, and he says he has a shtar ubechazaka. Cheskes gimel shanim, as well as ishtar. What is the halacha nidain b'shtar? Divrei Rabbi. We judge the case based upon the shtar that he claims he has. Reshba goymer nidain b'chazaka. V'avinaba b'chazaka v'lei b'shtar. We said, what exactly is this chazaka? What does Rav Shimon Gamliel mean? He means that you're nidain b'chazaka, and now with a shtar. Elaima, you know what it means? Af b'chazaka. Rav Shimon Gamliel is teaching us that you're not only nidain b'shtar, but you're also nidain b'chazaka. V'kaim alon tibitzarech levarer peligi. And what is the machlekes that we learned over there about Basra? The machlekes is sarech levarer. Does one need to substantiate his claim or not? Rebbe says he must substantiate it, and therefore that's the reason why you have to pull out the shtar. Rameir and our Mishnah holds the same. Rashbag holds no. He does not have to bring out the shtar, and that's going to be like the Rabbanan by us, who holds you do not need to bring another set of edim. So suggests the Gemara that maybe our machlekes, Rameir and the Rabbanan, is the machlekes Rabbi and Rav Shimon Gamliel. Says the Gemara, lie, this is not the same machlekes. Aliba de Rashba Kuli Amalai Bliki, there is no machlekes according to Rav Shimon Gamliel. Even Rav Meir would hold that you do not, even Rav Meir, or our Mishnah holds you do not have to produce another set of edim. We agree over there. Says the Gemara, Aliba de Rabbi de Rav Meir, Kuli Amalai Bliki, keep Bliki Aliba de Rabbi. The machlekes is according to the sheet of Rabbi who argues on Rav Shimon Gamliel. And Rabbi says, Abba b'shtar b'chazak and nidan b'shtar. That is the machlekes. The Rameir Rabbi, as we just suggested. Rabbanan ami l'chad, kando kama Rabbi asim. Rabbi only says it didn't over there, ala b'chazak and mikoyach shtara ka'asi. Because he's coming mikoyach l'shtar, aval hachad ani edim. Lav mikoyach edim achrini ka'asi, that afilu Rabbi moida de'ina tzarch levarer. So says the Gemara, that's going to be the machlekes, and it's not the same machlekes over there as it is by us. After the Gemara has proven that it is not the same machlekes, says the Gemara, Kiyasa Rav and Amar Rav Yechanan. Rav said the name of Rav Yechanan, Reisha be'edim psulim v'deyanim kesherim. Says Rav in the name of Rav Yechanan, the Reisha is be'edim psulim, where the edim are found to be pasul, but at the same time, v'dayanim kesherim, but the dayanim are indeed kosher. And therefore what? Says the Gemara in the top line of Chavdalah Maral, Migu de pasli edim. Since we have a verified paslos, since the edim are shown to be pasul, pasli nami dayane. Therefore we could say that dayanim are pasul as well. Whereas Seifa is the opposite, but dayanim psulim ve'edim ksherim. Demigu de pasli dayanim pasli nami edim, and that's going to be the machlekes. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Maskivla Rava, yes, Rava. That I understand. I understand that if the Edim are apostle, I can say that the Edim are apostle. Why you can be dinachrina? Because why? You could just go to another Bezdin, Ella. But rather, 6 lines down, I don't understand, asks Rava. Migu de Pasli Dayani Paslinami Edim. How can you say that? Edim Sulaka, there's no more Edim. These are the Edim. So how can you say that? Because that is Basel, this is Basel. Says the Gemara, Lachicha Deika Katacharis, talking about a case where there is another group of Edim. Ask the Gemara, like a Katacharis, but what if there is not another group of Edim? Hachanami Dlomatzi Pasli, are you going to say that he cannot passel? Hainu Dravdimi. Then it comes out that it's the exact same thing as Ravdimi. Ikebenayu explains the Gemara Migu de Migu. The Maris Amrina Migu Maris Savar Loy Amrina and Migu. Ravin holds we say the Migu, whereas Ravdimi holds we absolutely do not. And now that ends part A, which is really wrapping up yesterday's daf. Now the Gemara continues discussing Gufa. Let's go a little bit back. Let's go back to the beginning of yesterday's Shir Daf Chav Gimel Amar Aleph. Amar Reish Lakish Pekadosh Yemer Davar Zeh. Said Reish Lakish, could it be that Rameir Pekadosh would say such a thing? Rather, to new Adav, insert in Adav. Asks the Gemara, guess what? Aini, no, indeed Reish Lakish said such a thing. Reish Lakish would appear in the base measures as if he uprooted mountains and ground them one against the other. So says the Gemara, so why would Rameir be so anti-Pekadosh? What's Rameir doing? Explains the Gemara in the last line, that if you saw Rameir and the base measure, she was even greater. So Rameir is even greater than Reish Lakish, and therefore the kasha of Rameir on top of Reish Lakish makes a lot of sense. Hachi Kamar, and explains the Gemara, Baurei Kama Mechavavin Zeh, says the Gemara, come and see how much love there is between them. Ki Adi Yosef Rabbi v'Kamar Asalatin Esatzaynein. Amavanim Rashim Rabbi Yasi Abba Tirlatin Esayin. Amrlei Kvar Hayra Zakein. What do you mean? What do you come to teach me? Kvar Hayra Zakein. It's already a conclusive detail to such. Amar Papa Barei Kamacham Zazad Dealer of Yasi Kayim Ayakavi Yosef Nei Rabbi, and if Yosef was alive, you'd sit in front of him. Tarav Yishav Rabbi Yasi Mali Makam Avaisav Have. But he would be unwilling to change anything. When Rabbi heard something from Rabbi Yasi, he would say, Hayr Zakein, Rabbi Yasi Paskin, then he would not argue on such a psak halacha. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yeshia. We're 6 lines into the very wide lines in Chavdal Amar Aleph. What is the meaning of the pasuk? And I'm going to take 2 sticks. One of them I'm going to call Noyam. One of them I'm going to call Chayvlim, literally gracious and assaulters. Noyam ilu Tamid Cham Sheberetz Yisrael Shaminim Zeh Halacha. That refers to the Tamid Cham Eretz Yisrael who are kind and gracious to one another in halacha. Chayvlim, what does that refer to? They literally assault each other with halacha. Different stylistic differences between those in Eretz Yisrael versus those in Bavel. The kind responses of those in Eretz Yisrael versus the cynical, perhaps, or biting responses of those in Bavel. Continues the Gemara, another pasuk. The pasuk says there are 2 sons of the oil, literally, who stand. Ushnayim zitim alel yitzar, and it says, and 2 olive trees are next it. These are Talmidei Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael who are easily going with one another in halacha. Keshem and Zayis. And what's the next 2 olive trees? Shem that are bitter to one another in halacha kizayis. And another pasuk criticizing those in Bavel, and I raised, says the Zechariah, my eyes, and I saw 2 women came out, and the wind was in their wings, and the wind was like the wings of the Chasida, and he lifted them up, Haifa, Beina Shamayim, Ubeina Aretz. We lifted them up between Shamayim and between Aretz. And the pasuk continues in Zechariah, V'oimar el HaMalach Hadover Bi, and I said to the Malach Hadover Bi that spoke to me, Hema hamaylichois es ha'efa. Where are those that are taking the ephah of Yomer Eli? And the Malach responded, Eli to me, Livnois la be'ayis be'eret shinar. They're going to build a house. Be'eret shinar. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yechon Misham Rav Shimon Ben Yochai Zeh Chanufa V'Gasas Ruach Sheyardu LeBavel. These women in the Navi Zechariah are the traits of Chanufa, of Gasas Ruach Sheyardu LeBavel, that went down to Bavel. Says the Gemara, V'Gasas Ruach LeBavel Nachis. The Gasas Ruach go down to Bavel. V'Amar Mar, but we have learned Sarah Kavin a Gemara in Kedusha and Gasas Yardu LaElam Tisha not LaElam 9 went to Elam V'Achas Kulam Kulay. So says the Gemara, it doesn't seem like it went to Bavel. Answers the Gemara, indeed, LeBavel Nachis, Ishtaruve Leilam, and from Bavel, it's circled to Elam. Tekanami, I'll bring you a raya, Dechsev Lemnois Labayis, Beret Shinar, Shema Mina, that is the raya from the fact that it said, Live Nice La, to build it. Those are the women in Bavel, while the others laugh, Shema Mina, that is a raya. Ask the Gemara of Amar Mar Simin Elegasas Ruach Anios Vanias LeBavel Melchis. But we know that what's the simin of those who are arrogant is poverty. And poverty went to Bavel. So poverty went to Bavel. It would seem that the people in Bavel did have this Gasas Ruach, and not that it went to Elam as we just suggested. Answers the Gemara, Maya Anios Taira. Taira, they were Aniyim in Taira, Dechsev Achaisanu Ketana V'Shedim in Law. Amar Rav Yechram Zu Elim Shezachsel Lomai V'Lazachsel Lelamid V'Shadayim in Law. There were no brass, there was no giving over of the Taira. Indeed, they learned, but they did not teach. My Bavel, what does it mean? Bavel. Amar Rav Yechram Belula b'Mikra, Belula b'Mishnah, Belula b'Talmud. It is saturated with Torah, we're saturated with Mishnah, saturated with Talmud. Says the Gemara. The Gemara concludes one last line about those in Bavel b'Machshachem Ashivani Kemeisei Olam. Says the pasuk, place me in darkness like those who are dead. Amar Rav Yirmiyah Zu Talmuda Shel Bavel. This is the Talmud Bavel. We're learning Talmud Bavli. Here we have it. Over 5 years into Shas, so the Shas itself references Talmud Bavel. Incredible, incredible. On a day, we should mention the daf for the day of Asar B'Teves, mentioning the building of Eretz Shinar, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, B'siyata Dishmaya. And now we continue with a Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Amar Lai Neman Olai Abba. So this really is a direct segue from the previous Mishnah, in which we learned that each side could passel up someone as being a dayan, as being a karov, as being a apostle. So says the Mishnah, what if one of them says, no, Neman Olai Abba, I'm okay, even though a father is certainly related, but I'm okay if my father is a dayan. Neman Olai Avicha. Or if he says, your father is okay to be a dayan. Neman Olai Shleisha Rayi Bakar. Or if someone says, 3 cattle herders, certainly one who's not a Talmud Chacham, but I trust him as a dayan. If someone makes such a statement, says Rameir, you could back out after the Chum say no. If someone is obligated a shvuah of Amar Lai, Dar li b'chaye roishecha, and if someone says, swear to me by the life of your head, a personal oath, know what? We could forego the Bezdin imposed Sefer Torah. Just swear to me on your life. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Dimi, Breder Rav Nachman, Breder Rav Yezkon, the Kabli Alei Bechat. Says the Gemara, what is the case in which one accepted upon himself that a father could be a dayan is the Kabli Alei Bechat, is where one of them accepted upon himself as to serve as one of the 3 dayanim. Says the Gemara, Rav Yudah Shmuel, Machlekes b'machal lecha. The machlekes is when one of them says, my money, I'm meichel to you. I'm meichel if the Bezdin rules that you are right. But if someone says, etein lacha, I will give it to you, and then everyone agrees, you can back up. No, even that is a machlekes. So we have a machlekes in the Gemara, at which point there is this ability or this inability to back out once one accepts upon themselves a dayan or not. Says the Gemara, Yivailu Batin l'cha machlokes. We just said, according to Rav Yochanan, Batin l'cha machlokes. So says the Gemara is Batin l'machlokes amalcha dever kai nuch lachzer. But Yodama bein zu machlokes. What does Rav Yochanan mean? Does Rav Yochanan mean there's machlokes in both or just in Batin l'cha? Tashema, 6 lines to the bottom. Damar Rav machlokes Batin l'cha v'machlcha dever kol. Eino yachal lachzer boy. The machlokes is Batin l'cha. But if he's Michael, everyone says you could subsequently retract. So says the Gemara, then the math works, but in the reverse, it comes out the Rava is holding like no one. Says the Gemara, Rava, that's not shver, that's not a raya. I'll tell you, Rava is just saying his own reasoning. Esvei continues the Gemara Kasha on Rava. Ravacha bar tachliva l'Rava. Hayachayiv l'chaver shvua v'amar dar li b'chayi roishecha. Someone is obligated a shvua and he says, swear to me by the life of your head. Rameir amiyach lachzer chamer eino yachal lachzer boy. And we turn over to Chavdal Mabes and says the Gemara, what is this machlokes whether you could be chayzer when one told his friend that he wants him to swear? B'chaye roishecha. My love, says the Gemara, what's the case that he's swearing? Says the Gemara, referring to a case that he swears and he doesn't play. And it's similar to a case of I'm being moichel you. I'm not actually paying you. I'm just taking a shvuah instead. And what do we see? We see that in this case, you could be chayzer. Not like Rava just said. Says Gemara, that's not what it's referring to. Talking about a case where someone swears and someone collects. It's like atin l'cha. Ask the Gemara, but we learned in the Reisha the same case. Answers the Gemara, it's true. We're talking about the same case 2 different times. One is one is atzmai. Then what? That's Ramir says you could be chayzer misham deloy gamaru makni. Why? Because he was never a full gemiras das. The Amar, because he says, who says he's actually going to be zaycha? Who says the judge is going to paskin in his favor, and therefore he doesn't really think it's going to happen. Aval, however, das atzmai. But in case of Talib Das Atzmai, maybe in such a scenario, he would admit to the Rabbanan. V'yashminan baha. If you only said this case, I would have thought Bakam Rabbanan. Aval bahi emodei the Rabbanan the Rameir Sricha. Therefore, says the Gemara, that's why we need both cases. We continue with the din of Reish Lakish. Said our Mishnah that we don't know exactly the reason. What is the case in which one wanted to back out? We said someone accepted a Abba or Avicha as a Dayan, and then he wants to back out. So says the Gemara, what precisely is this case? Amar Reish Lakish, about 12 lines down. The first one line is Lifnei. Machlekes Lifnei Gemar Din Aval Achar Ma'adin Dever Koni Yeno Yachal Lachzer Bay. Says Reish Lakish, you can only back out before there's the Gemar Din. Whereas Rav Yochanan Amar, no, Lachar Gemar Din Machlekes. Even at Lachar Gemar Din, it is a machlekes whether one can actually back out. And of course, the question is, what does Rav Yochanan mean? So Yibayalu asked the Gemara, Lachar Gemar Din machlekes, Aval Lifnei Gemar Din Dever Kol Yachal Lachzer Bay. What does Rav Yochanan mean? Very similar to the previous shayla. Does Rav Yochanan mean that Lachar Gemar Din is a machlekes, but before the Gemar Din, everyone will be asking you could back out? Oidelma bein bezu is machlekes in both cases. Tashema proves the Gemara damar Rava. Kibul of karei v'apostle. If someone accepts a car for apostle is dying. Lifnei Gemar Din yachal lachzer bay. Lachar Mardin eino yachal lachzer bay. So amar sham lachar Mardin machlekes. If Rav Yochanan meant Lachar Mardin machlekes, but what? Aval Lifnei Mardin dever kol yachal lachzer bay. Rava damar Rav Yochanan. Then it fits out beautifully. Then his member of Rava is like Rav Yochanan. V'aliva derabon and good derabon. Aliyamri beimizu machlekes over the Kiman. Ela shmamina lachar Mardin machlekes shmamina. So proves the Gemara that the machlekes is la'achar Lachar Gemar Din is going to be the machlokes, but lefnei Gemar Din, everyone will agree, in the middle of the court case, that you could back out. And now the question is, what is the psak halacha? Shalach lei Rav Nachman bar Rav, achista Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, yilamdenu Rabbeinu. Teach us. Lefnei Gemar Din machlokes, or lachar Gemar Din machlokes, v'halacha kedivrei mi. So you wanted to know, what is lemaisa, tachlis, what is the psak halacha? So shalach lei, lachar Gemar Din machlokes, v'halacha kedivrei chachamim. Lachar Gemar Din machlokes, and halacha is like the chachamim. Rav Ashi Amar Hachi Shalach Lei, what he sent him. Be'etin l'cha machlokes, machla machlokes. It was a different shayla. Wasn't this, meaning today's daf, we had two different shaylos. We had etin l'cha machlacha, lefnei Gemar Din, lachar Gemar Din. So says Rav Ashi, no, it wasn't lefnei and lachar. Rather, it was etin l'cha b'machlacha. That was the shayla. V'lachik divrei mi. And on that shalach lei, be'etin l'cha machlokes. V'lachik divrei chachamim. Besura masni hachi, that's what they learn. But B'tisa masni hachi, as follows: Amar Chalina bar Shalmai shalchlim mebei Rav Lishmol Yamdin Rabbeinu. Fleig Gemar Din v'kanu biyadai mai shalch lei in ein la'achar kiniyas klom. That once there is a kinyan, then there's nothing that can be done. Then of course, after the kinyan, then of course nothing will able to be changed. And we continue with one more Mishnah. Says the Gemara, we just said back whether we're going to be able to back out on a dayan. Says the Mishnah of Eluin Absulum. Firstly, who is Pasal? Hamisachik Ba'kovya. Someone who plays with dice, Amav Berivis, someone who lends with inches, Mavricha Yevanim. Someone who pigeon flyers, Seichri Shviyah, someone who rents money on Shvita. Amar Rav Shemei Betchila, Ikarnos Oisvei Shviyas. Originally, they would call them just gatherers, but then when many people started doing it, they called them merchants. Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda is a very broad application. That stam misachik ba'kovya, stam lending with interest is usher, but it doesn't make you pasal eidus, says Rav Yehuda. Or it doesn't make you pasal eidus if that is your prime profession. We'll pick it up from here, b'siyata dishmaya.